Hello, folks. On today's episode, we're going to talk about how the Bengals should have written a song called March Like an Egyptian. That's right, our good buddy, President Sisi in Egypt, has done something major, and we want to talk about it on the show.
Ba 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 da 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 ba 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 da 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 ba 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 da da ba 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 ba
Hello, folks. This is the America First Committee with Dan Mattingly, and I'm here to talk to you about a very important development in the Middle East. Now, as you can see by our display here, this is going to further illuminate what I'm talking about in a few moments. Now, in the Middle East, some very disturbing things have just happened. In fact, it was on a Sunday, this past Sunday. President Sisi of Egypt, the man who, through our continued military support of Egypt, was able to militarily overthrow a democratically elected government. Well, that gentleman at an Arab League summit said that the Arab League needs to and will create an army. This is not the first time they've said it, but they actually have plans for assembling it this time, and they have a massive desire to do so. Saudi Arabia and Egypt, two of the major players in the region, feel they need to try to counter, for instance, the collapse of Yemen by having those the militants and the civil war going on in Yemen. They're trying to counter that. They're also very upset by the growth of ISIS and the expansion of ISIS into other regions around their own region, such as Lebanon, such as Libya, such as, well, as we know, we have Syria and Iraq already, but they're growing out, and now there's fear they're going to grow into Yemen. But also, which is what these two little placards here and our little army men illustrate, they're also trying to build an army, an Arab army, to try to counter Iranian influence in the region. They're blaming the collapse of the Yemeni government and the civil war that's going on there on Iranian agents. And in their speech that they gave, they said whether or not Iran gets the bomb, it's still a threat to the Gulf monarchies and to Egypt itself. Now, there's a lot of former bitterness between these two sides, which are represented by largely their two faiths, Sunni and Shia Islam. And so now this is just boiling over again. This is getting to be a really dicey and tough situation. And I think it draws some parallels to Europe in the first half of the 20th century. You have sides that are trying to pick fights, that are arming themselves rapidly. And the question I want you, the viewer, to think about, should we, the U.S., represented by this flag and by my nice new little handkerchief I got, should we, the U.S., really stand in between these two armies and take their shots to try to protect themselves from themselves? Or should we let them work it out together? If we're not there to try to mediate it and to try to play goalie, really referee is what I'm looking for, will they actually be able to come to a better conclusion? Because as of now, they still see the U.S. as somebody to try to go to on these negotiations, on these fights and everything. We're still an active player in their region. Now, while the Arab League did develop are developing their own army to try to have some independence from us, aka Washington, they still recognize that we are acting as a player in the region. Should we? Should we, after these two groups are now better armed and actually have formal armies and other groups that they're affiliated with doing various proxy wars with each other, is that something that we should get involved in? At the America First Committee, we say no. By us being the referee and being stuck in the middle of these two, it's only going to waste American lives and American treasure. We're going to lose good American soldiers for a battle between what? How is this part of our national interest? This is not. By us always trying to be referee and trying to protect them, they know that they have some wiggle room. They know they have some ability to push the envelope and have us try to calm the situation down. No, we shouldn't do that. Let them realize it's their region, their countries, and their ability or inability to work together. Now, that being said, how are we going to disengage ourselves? We have to pull ourselves back. That's what we need to do. It's really scary that Sisi, a guy who we are somewhat responsible for putting in power, is really going on the offensive in this way. He wants to send his army to support Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is really upset about the situation in Yemen. And from that, from our desire to be involved, but also to pull back, this non-strategy strategy in the Middle East is causing a huge amount of tension and a huge amount of anxiety. If we clearly stated that our policy was to not get involved in these internal affairs, then the whole region will understand what we were actually standing for, and that we are not going to possibly intervene, for instance, in Libya, but not intervene in Syria. Actions like that are throwing the whole region into flux, and they don't know who they can push and who they can't push. And so now they're pushing everywhere, which is very scary and going to be troublesome for us. And Iran getting the bomb, trying to negotiate that and talk about that, while it is in our vested interest to try to prevent the growth of atomic weaponry around the world, this issue is just as important. And this issue we need to address differently. That is the view of the American First Committee, and that is the view that we hope you, the viewer, agree with, because we are trying to save American lives here. We're not trying to put Americans in harm's way for some bizarre and existential thoughts. And with that, we want to say thank you for watching the show. If you have any thoughts or comments, please forward it to us. Thank you and have a good day.
America First Committee, P.O. Box 108, Auburn, New Hampshire 03032, or at my email account, americafirstcommittee@gmail.com, or the Twitter handle @USA First Committee. Thank you.